We cannot explain what you are about to hear. Science doesn't know enough about the brain to make sense of Alma. Alma Deutscher is an accomplished British composer in the classical style. She is a virtuoso on the piano and the violin, and she is 12 years old. She's different from other prodigies we have known because at the age of 10, she wrote an opera which demands comprehensive mastery, not just how to play the piano, but what is the range of the oboe? What can a cellist play? We don't know how she understands it all. It seems that Alma was born that way.
What is your earliest musical memory?
I remember that when I was 3 and I listened to this really beautiful lullaby by Richard Strauss. And that was when I really first realized how much I loved music. And I asked my parents, but how can music be so beautiful?
Do you remember the melody?
Yes. You want me to sing it?
Please.
Those notes of Richard Strauss ignited a universe. At 3, Alma was playing piano and violin.
When did the composing begin?
When I was 4, I just had these melodies and ideas in my head, and I would play them down at the piano. And sometimes my parents would think that I was just remembering the music that I'd already had before. But I said, no, these are my melodies that I composed. Teach me much more, I think.
This past summer in Austria, we watched Alma prepare her violin concerto and the premiere of her piano concerto. Joji Hattori conducts the Vienna Chamber Orchestra.
And maybe
just the clarinet.
Just the clarinet.
Yeah.
What I really want to hear is a violin and the clarinet. Da, 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 da.
That night, the soloist was the composer herself. And as you listen, remember, she wrote all the notes for all the instruments. We could see Alma was living a story. A story of loss. A story of redemption. Scales of emotion beyond a child. And yet her vision was almost like wisdom.
Do you have any idea where this comes from?
I don't really know, but it's really very normal to me to walk around and having melodies popping into my head. It's the most normal thing in the world. For me, it's strange to walk around and not to have melodies popping into my head. So if I was interviewing you, I would say, well, tell me, Scott, how does it feel like not having melodies popping into your head?
It's very quiet in my head, I must say.
But it appears never quiet in hers. Look what happened when we took a break from filming at the Deutscher home. Never mind the background noise, that's just the rustle of lunch. This is idle Alma. When she has nothing to do, the music flows from its mysterious source as fluently as breath.
Do you feel that there's anything about Alma's gift that you don't understand?
Her parents, Guy and Janie, are professors. She teaches Old English literature, and Guy is a noted linguist. Both of them are amateur musicians.
We don't understand creativity. Does anyone? I mean, I think that's the crux of the mystery. Where does it come from, this melodies popping into your head? I mean, it really is a volcano of imagination. It's almost unstoppable.
It was Guy who taught her how to read music.
I thought I was an amazing teacher because, you know, I hardly had to...
You thought it was you?
I thought it was me. I hardly had to say something. And she, you know, a piano teacher once said, it's difficult to teach her because one always has the sense she's been there before.
She wouldn't be able to imagine life without dreams and stories and music. That's as unimaginable to her as it is strange for other people to think about a little girl with melodies in her head.
I love getting the melodies. It's not at all difficult to me. I get them all the time. But then actually sitting down and developing the melodies, and that's really the difficult part, having to tell a real story with the music.
Silberner Klang, lieblicher Klang, Töne sie gleiten auf hellen Morgenstrahl.
The story Alma tells in her opera is Cinderella, but it's not the Cinderella you know. It seemed demeaning to Alma that Cinderella was attractive just because her feet were small. So she cast Cinderella as a composer and the prince as a poet.
Cinderella finds a poem that was composed by the prince, and she loves it, and she's inspired to put music to it. And in the ball, she sings it to the prince. I think that it makes much more sense if he falls in love with her because she composed this amazing melody to his poem, because he thinks that she's his soulmate, because he understands her.
Well, people can fall in love with composers.
Exactly.
I think this may be one of those times.
They fell in love with Cinderella in its first production in Vienna.
There is another composer who had an opera premiere in Vienna at the age of 11, Mozart. People compare you to Mozart. What do you think of that?
I know that they mean it to be very nice to compare me to Mozart.
It could be worse.
Of course, I love Mozart and I would have loved him to be my teacher. But I think I would prefer to be the first Alma than to be a second Mozart.
In Israel, Mozart joined Alma on stage. She played his piano concerto with a cadenza. In a cadenza, the orchestra stops and the soloist breaks away in music of her own making.
It's something that I composed because it's a very early concerto of Mozart. And the cadenza was very simple. It didn't go to any different keys. And I composed quite a long one, going to lots and lots of different keys, doing lots of things on Mozart's motifs.
So you improved the cadenza of Mozart.
Well, yes.
It's kind of a comet that goes by and everybody looks up and just goes, wow.
Robert Yertigan is a professor of music at Northwestern in Chicago. He has been a consultant to Alma's education.
I sent her some assignments when she was 6, 7, where I expected her to crash and burn because they were very difficult. It came back, it was like listening to a mid-18th century composer. She was a native speaker.
A native speaker?
It's her first language. She speaks the Mozart style. She speaks the style of Mendelssohn.
And the names that you just mentioned are the ones that lived for centuries.
Yes. She's batting in the big leagues, and if you win the pennant, there's immortality.
The route to immortality leads through California. In December, the San Jose Orchestra will stage Cinderella in Alma's American debut. She'll be the belle of the ball on the piano, organ, and violin.
The piano music teachers say, oh, you must choose the piano. And the violin music teachers say, oh, you must choose the violin. But anyway, that's better than the piano teacher saying, you must choose the violin. And the violin teacher
Yeah,
say,
that would be a bad sign.
That would be a bad sign, yes.
Fortunately, she doesn't have to choose. This is her composition, Violin Concerto Number 1.
It's extremely jolly, very happy and jocular, that movement. I want to make the people who listen to it laugh and be happy. The first movement of the violin concerto is quite the opposite. It's very dark and dramatic.
What does a girl your age know about dark and dramatic?
Well, yes, that's an interesting question because, you know, I'm a very happy person, so I have lots of imaginary composers, and one of them is called Antonin Yellowsink.
Antonin Yellowsink, Alma's imaginary composing friend, is an insight into the music of her mind. Alma told us that she made up a country where imaginary composers write, each in his own style of emotion.
So how many composers do you have in your head?
I have lots of composers, and sometimes when I'm stuck with something when I'm composing, I go to them and ask them for advice, and quite often they come up with very interesting things.
Even the real world seems magical. The Deutschers moved to the English countryside to be near a famous school of music. Alma is privately tutored and homeschooled alongside her sister Helen, who also knows her way around the piano and the treehouse.
I usually don't ask people your age this question, but what have you learned about life?
Well, I know that life is not always beautiful, that there's also ugliness in the world. That's why I've learned that I want to write beautiful music, because I want to make the world a better place.
We cannot know how Alma Deutscher channels her music like a portal in time. But in a world too often ugly and too often overburdened with explanation, it is nice to take a moment and wonder.
Child prodigies have long been a source of great fascination. We wonder, how can so much talent reside in such a young body, so much genius? In a moment, you'll meet Jake, a 13-year-old math and science prodigy who's confident he may one day challenge some of the established theories of physics. The source of that talent and that confidence comes from our most remarkable organ, the one we understand least, the brain. What is it about Jake Barnett that had him taking college courses at age 8 and getting A's, and by 12 doing paid scientific research? And today, at age 13, an honors college sophomore lecturing the crowd at his university science symposium.
And do any of you guys want my resume at all?
The untied shoelaces reveal either your average teenager or the first telltale signs of the absent-minded professor,
Cool.
or both.
Let's look at the system of points.
Surrounded by researchers twice his age, Jake is presenting his summer physics research project on PT symmetric lattice systems.
This has implications in fiber optics, electromagnetic signals, anything that requires like a light going through a cable. Got it?
Every number or math problem I ever hear, I have permanently remembered.
You just never forget. They never slip
forget.
out the back door of your brain.
No.
Is it fun for you to do it? I mean, do you get a kick out of it?
Yeah.
For Jake, fun is reciting from memory the infinite series of numbers known as pi.
3.141592653589793238462643383279502.
Jake memorized more than 200 of pi's numbers in an afternoon. And he did it just to test himself.
You want me to go backwards from there?
Well, sure.
32397985356295141.3.
Bravo. He's not just parroting a textbook. He understands and analyzes the logic of higher mathematics. He can visualize and solve complex problems by using what he calls the fourth dimension. Just exactly what is the fourth dimension?
It's hard to describe in terms of the typical 3 because it's tangent to all the other ones. I'd be able to describe it if I had like a whiteboard and like 30 minutes to describe it. It takes a while. It's the fourth dimension. What do you expect?
The numbers appear to him as shapes that he says just build on one another.
So this, for example, is 3 cubed or 27. And then if I want to do 54, I just stack another one onto it.
He says his mind is constantly buzzing with new physics problems and theories. When he runs out of wall space, he moves on to windows. Remembering things so precisely, does that ever become a burden to you?
No, not at all.
No sense of overload?
I remember math and numbers. I don't remember other things. For example, if someone asks me where something is in the house, I tell them I don't know.
The oldest of 4 kids, Jake lives with his family in the suburbs of Indianapolis.
These are my periodic table. It's got all my elements.
He used the money he made from his summer research project, $3,200, to turn his bedroom into a science lab.
Copernicus was the most recently named element.
For as long as he can remember, he's been fascinated by the mysteries of space.
Saturn is my favorite planet, not due to the rings, but due to some of its moons.
Any ambition to be an astronaut?
Not an astronaut. That's like too dangerous. I'm going to be the guy controlling the astronauts. If anyone's an astronaut, it's going to be my brother.
All work and only occasional play does not make Jake a dull boy. What do you do for fun?
When it isn't anything academic?
No, I mean beyond the academics.
Does looking up space articles online count? Pi a cubed divided.
He has a full scholarship at the joint Indiana University-Purdue campus in Indianapolis, where he is an honors student in math and physics. He may not be the tallest student on campus, but is surely among the brightest. He regularly gets the highest grades in his classes.
What happens if you have C sub n, where it's proportional to n?
Jake's been auditing classes here since the ripe old age of 8, when it became obvious to his parents that 3rd grade was not going to be enough for him. What did your fellow students make of you?
Everyone was thinking that Mom was taking the class and she couldn't find a babysitter.
The students thought I was the student.
His parents, Christine and Michael Barnett, expected their son would quietly listen and learn. But even they were shocked when Jake jumped right into scientific discussions.
The professor would ask questions and Jake was answering them. And then he took the final at the end and got an A on it. And suddenly the people at the university took notice of that and eventually invited him to attend the university.
It's pretty shocking when an 8-year-old aces a university astronomy course. Weren't you impressed?
I guess I was impressed. I was just doing what I like to do.
No one could have predicted that Jake would even make it to college. Just before his 2nd birthday, he began to regress, stopped speaking and making eye contact. After consulting with several doctors, the diagnosis was autism.
We went through speech therapy, physical therapy, developmental therapy, occupational therapy. A therapist came to the home.
He was going further and further from our world into a world of his own. And I really was just baffled at how we were going to get him back out of that world.
And how did you get him back out of that world?
We realized that Jacob was not happy unless he was doing something he loved.
Which even as a 3-year-old was math and science. His parents say the more he focused on the subjects he loved, the more he began to communicate.
You could just see him just relax. You could just see him feel like thank goodness we're not working on something that I can't do today.
And how long did it take for him to, as you say, come back?
By the time he was kindergarten age, 5, 6, he was still behind as far as speaking with others and socializing with others. But he was also light years ahead of everybody else. He was coming home asking us, when am I going to learn something at school today? I want to learn algebra.
It was trying to keep Jake challenged that led to a kind of double life. Elementary school by day and sitting in on college courses in the evening. By 5th grade, he dropped out of public school, and just to demonstrate that he was ready for college, he taught himself all of high school math in just 2 weeks. He was 10 years old.
That was the most determined thing I've ever seen anybody do. He had to sit in a calculus class to prove to the university that he could sit still. And Jacob was like, I'm going to participate in that class discussion. So if I need to learn Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, trig, that's what I'm going to do. And he took a stack of books and he sat down and he just
went and taught himself all of it in 2 weeks.
Not only that, he finished the entire state of Indiana curriculum for grades 6 to 12 in little over a year. The Barnetts, who've started a center for autistic kids called Jacob's Place, say that many of Jake's symptoms of autism have disappeared.
There are certain traits that are still there, and if you really, really knew what you were looking for, you could dig them out. But otherwise, that I got a 10-year-old kid at that point in time that just happens to be doing next level work and no one knew anything different.
Your parents told us that you're very proud of your autism.
That, I believe, is the reason why I am in college and I am so successful. It is the rise as to my love for math and science and astronomy, and it's the reason why I care. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten this far.
Joanne Ruthseth, a psychology professor at Ohio State, has been studying child prodigies for the last 13 years. She believes there's a link between autism and prodigies.
We know that child prodigies are having autistic relatives at a very high clip, and some of them have autism themselves.
She believes that what sets a prodigy with autism apart from other children with the condition is the prodigy's genes have been modified so that the genius emerges without many of the severe disabilities associated with autism.
In the general population of autism, 10% will have an autistic savant skill where they're exceptional at something. And they've only got that piece displaying itself.
She says for prodigies, be it in math, music, or art, the key to the extraordinary talent is extraordinary memory.
They all share this incredible memory, each and every one of them.
In Jake's case, he's 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What's remarkable is not just this memory, but his vocabulary is so adult.
Of course, they speak like adults. They've picked up so much information along the way so early in their life and continue to do so.
She says a talent like Jake's is about 1 in 10 million.
Jake's extraordinary. He's picking up information at a rate that none of us could even imagine doing it.
She's tested Jake and says he literally aces every intelligence and memory test.
Imagine if everything you saw you could remember. Every word you heard, you could recall that. And then you could integrate that information and come up with new ideas. That's what he's doing.
Kentucky, New Mexico,
A demonstration.
Nevada,
Dr. Ruthseth named 28
Florida,
states in random order.
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin,
No surprise, he
North
was able to
Dakota,
do it forwards
Washington,
and backwards in sequence
Missouri,
with ease. And when asked again 3 months later, you still remember them?
Yes, I do.
In the same order?
Mm-hmm. And I can still go backwards.
And backwards? Give me 5 or 10.
Kentucky, New Mexico, Nevada, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Washington, Missouri, Texas, Utah, Colorado.
While some may dismiss Jake's talent as simply a gift of remarkable memory, his physics professor says the boy is much more than a human calculator. Is it just great memory or something else?
It is definitely something else. The great memory does help him, of course, because once he reads something, he remembers it. But what is more important is that he has the drive to learn more. He definitely stands out as a powerhouse of raw talent.
Professor Yogesh Joglekar oversaw Jake's research project. Their work was published in Physical Review A. Jake is the youngest person to be published in that prestigious physics journal.
The whole randomness thing, that's like completely against all of physics.
He plans to continue his research, building on Einstein's theory of relativity. His parents say he takes on these challenges with an easy grace.
He has his own little tight-knit group of friends that he hangs out with, he studies with. He leads study groups. I have college-age girls calling the house wanting to know if Jake is available to study during finals. When I go to campus with him, it's like I'm walking around with Elvis.
So far, the king seems to keep his celebrity status in check, more or less.
Practically everyone knows who I am.
Are you a star on this campus?
Big man on campus. I just figured it out.
But the little big man says he enjoys nothing more than using his talent to help fellow classmates see the beauty he sees in the numbers.
Thanks, Jake.
You're welcome.
I kind of want to try to use that to end the whole math phobia thing.
Because so many people like me and millions of others are scared of math, are scared of science, correct? Why is that so funny? You almost can't understand how anyone could be.
Exactly, yeah.
Jake is writing a book to help us overcome our fear of math, and he's on track to graduate at age 14, when he hopes to begin his PhD studies. Pancreatic cancer is one of the most aggressive and deadly cancers, in part because often by the time it's diagnosed, the disease has spread to other parts of the body. So when news broke last year that a test had been developed that might detect early pancreatic cancer, the research world not only took notice, it went into shock. For the test hadn't been developed by some renowned cancer research institute, but by a boy wonder, a 15-year-old high school freshman named Jack Andraka. He then convinced an eminent cancer researcher to let him use his lab to develop his theory, all before he even had a license to drive. While the test must undergo years of clinical trials, the biotech industry has already beaten a path to Jack's door. This is Jack Andraka as he beats out 1,500 contestants and wins the grand prize at the Intel International Science Fair with his invention. Like a modern-day Rocky, this self-described science geek took the stage and $100,000 in prize money. Pure, unadulterated, adolescent joy. When you won the Intel Award, your reaction went viral, correct?
Yes, it did.
It's a no-joke award.
I wasn't expecting any awards there. Then when I won, I was just flabbergasted. I was like freaking out. I was just like, what?
Yes, you were.
Me?
Jack Andraka's journey from suburban Baltimore high school freshman to cancer researcher began at age 14, when a family friend died of pancreatic cancer. Shocked that there's no reliable early test for the disease, Jack decided he would develop one. He began probing the internet for everything he could find about pancreatic cancer biomarkers. He read research articles during class, and in the middle of biology, while stealthily reading a medical journal, he says inspiration hit. The teacher was not amused.
I swear she has like eyes on the back of her head or something. She sees me and she storms up to my desk and is like, "Mr. Andraka, what is this?" and like snatches it out of my hand.
As if you had Playboy magazine.
Yeah. I'm just like, it was just a science article. Shouldn't this be a good thing?
When he told his parents, Steve and Jane Andraka, about his project, they weren't exactly encouraging.
My reaction wasn't a good one. I said, Jack, isn't that a little far-fetched?
And I know that when you're 14, you can't just run out and get a lab. A lot of people, are like, we don't train middle schoolers.
But Jack decided to find one that did. Over the course of 4 months, he prepared a test protocol for his theory and sent it out to 200 cancer researchers.
I essentially had to send them my budget, my procedure, my timeline, and materials list. And I actually got 199 rejections out of those. Some professors ripped apart my procedure completely, but One professor, Dr. Alma Deutscher, finally said yes.
An encouraging yes.
It was like, this idea might work. And he starts interrogating me, kind of, firing these questions, trying to sync my procedure in a way. But I answered all of them.
Dr. Anirban Maitra was a professor of oncology at Johns Hopkins University and now heads pancreatic cancer research at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. He says his curiosity was piqued by Jack's proposal.
Well, it's not every day that you get an email from a 15-year-old that comes with a detailed protocol with methods and supplies and what pitfalls you might run into. And I said, maybe I'll get you a corner in my lab and we'll have one of the postdoctoral fellows supervising you. Let's see where this all goes.
For the next 7 months after school and on weekends, Jack's mother would drop him off at the lab, where he learned basic lab techniques and worked on developing his cancer test.
Finally, one day in March, I realized this was actually working. Like, it was working amazingly because it was passing all of these preliminary tests. And I run out, and I'm pretty much like screaming around the lab. I finally go out and rush into my mom's car, and like me and her are screaming in the car. And then, of course, I have school the next day.
Jack's test detects an unusually high level of mesothelin, a protein that the body produces in pancreatic cancer's early and most treatable stage. What exactly are you doing now?
So essentially what this is it's one of my strips. And what you do is you first get an original measurement of how the electricity flows across it.
The paper strip is coated with a carbon substance that attracts mesothelin. It is placed in an apparatus that Jack built in his parents' garage.
And I'm just taking out one single drop of blood here.
A high level of mesothelin in a patient's blood sample may indicate the first stages of pancreatic cancer.
See how it's increased? It's increased by about 2 times here. And so what that means is that there's a really high level of this one protein there, and that signals the presence of pancreatic cancer for me.
While years of clinical trials must be done, there is no FDA-approved test that can reliably measure mesothelin. Dr. Maitra says a test of this kind that could detect pancreatic cancer in its earliest stage could save thousands of lives.
He did hone in to the most important missing aspect in terms of pancreatic cancer, which is we don't really have good early detection. There is nothing like a PSA test or a colonoscopy or a mammogram that you can get for the pancreas at this point in time. So by the time the majority of patients present, they already have tumor that has spread outside the pancreas, and those patients typically don't do very well.
He says the test, which cost Jack 3 cents a strip to make, is remarkably elegant in its simplicity. It's remarkable what you've achieved and what you've come up with, there's no question. Have the brain men come to talk to you and want to figure you out?
No, actually, no one has approached me to do like an autopsy of my brain yet. But
a scan.
A scan, but like maybe later on an autopsy. But really, I don't think it's that I'm really smart. I mean, I know people that are way smarter than me. You can be a genius, but if you don't have the creativity to put that knowledge to use, then you just have a bunch of knowledge and nothing else. I mean, like, then you're just as good as my smartphone.
His parents say he's been obsessed with science since he was a toddler, conducting experiments even as a 3-year-old. School for him was so easy, his parents tried to keep him engaged by encouraging science projects at home.
My family isn't the typical family. Like, instead of like talking about football, we have like all these science magazines all scattered through our house, and we talk about them at dinner.
After Jack decided to cultivate E. coli just for the fun of it on the kitchen stove, his parents insisted that he and his older brother Luke use the basement as their lab. Their parents believe the less they know about what goes on down there, the better. I gather the rule of the house is don't burn down the house and don't kill yourself.
Pretty much. It's don't blow up the house. I want to come home to a place to live.
What do they do down there?
I don't really know because I don't go down there much.
And they may have reason for concern. Clearly, neatness does not count. Last year, Luke cooked up some nitroglycerin just to see if he could.
And I was just interested to see, could I make it down here? It worked.
It also drew the attention of the FBI, who they say sent a letter letting them know that their internet purchasing history had been noted by the feds.
They were a little concerned. Chemicals.
I don't know why I'm laughing. But these days, Jack doesn't have much time for messing in the basement.
Jack Andraka.
His test idea has made him a star speaker at medical conferences all over the world.
So with me, I just use Google and Wikipedia to find a new way to attack pancreatic cancer. At the beginning of this, I didn't even know I had a pancreas. So if I could do that.
And he's become a regular at the White House. 4 visits this year alone.
Where's Jack? There he is. Jack, stand up.
You've also become a heavy-duty celebrity.
It's pretty insane. I mean, you see Barack Obama.
President Barack Obama.
Yeah, President Barack Obama. I'm just like, hello, Mr. President. And then, hello, First Lady. It's just like, it's crazy.
In the past year, he's spoken in Canada, Italy, Australia, Greece, the United Nations, and so far, 4 trips to England.
Earlier this year,
including this address he gave to the renowned Royal Society of Medicine about his test and the problems with current cancer diagnostics.
I typed this into the internet, and
This 15-year-old has all the confidence of a physician.
And what it comes up with is I could be going through cocaine withdrawal, I could have cancer, or I could be pregnant. So,
A stand-up physician.
so what I see in the future of medical diagnostics is a shift from the symptom-based to more of a diagnostic antibody-based approach, such as a sensor.
Working the crowds of academics and checking out Cambridge University, no big deal.
Could you study here?
Yes.
Jack easily maintains a 4.0 GPA in school, despite a spotty attendance record. You're still in high school, correct?
Yeah.
Why bother?
Well, the reason I still bother with high school is because of my mom. She's really like, you have to do high school and you have to go to college, but they're being kind of lenient with me right now.
Who wants tea?
Jack's family is pretty laid back about his success, low pressure, and a high sense of humor. They say that all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It seems that you've been doing all work.
Well, I would say all play, no work, because for me, going to the lab is pretty much play. I mean, it's the funnest thing ever.
Jack holds the patent on his cancer test, and with the help of his patent lawyer, is looking to license the technology to a pharmaceutical company in the next few months. Now, the actual testing on people or animals, I gather you're not interested in doing that.
So I did some preliminary studies. However, one thing I don't want to do is end up as a lab rat. I kind of want to be able to come up with a new idea and then really just move on to the next idea and have other people do the repetitive trials.
Well, where does that stand right now?
I have enough data to prove that this works, and so now I'm going to give it to the pharmaceutical companies to run it through like clinical trials and stuff.
He believes that one day his invention will be in every doctor's office and even on pharmacy shelves. But Dr. Maitra, who's seen so many promising ideas flame out when it comes to pancreatic cancer, urges caution.
Pancreatic cancer is a very humbling disease. Every time we think we have a home run, we barely get to first base. As a test, it is still a very long way off. And the reason for that is because such a test cannot be marketed unless it has been validated in large clinical trials. And that cannot be done in a small lab, that cannot be done by a 15-year-old. But that does not detract in any way from the remarkable achievement of this young man. I think he's brilliant.
I was sitting in class, and suddenly it hit me.
Between speaking engagements and the occasional appearance at school, Jack is back in the lab working on new diagnostic and environmental tests. And while he now moves in very adult circles, Jack says when it comes to his future, he's just like any other lost teenager.
I actually have no clue what I want to do when I grow up. I mean, hopefully something in science I'll be in, and hopefully I'll be doing work that will help change the world.
Jack has come up with a new diagnostic invention and is using it to compete for the $10 million Tricorder X Prize in medical diagnostics. All of the 300-plus teams competing are made up of adult researchers, except for one.
Magnus Carlsen is the best in the world. He's a 21-year-old Norwegian, reigns supreme in a sport played by 500 million people. It's chess. Many don't think of it as a sport because nobody moves. But chess masters will tell you it can be more brutal than boxing. That's because at the championship level, the objective is not only to win, but to demolish your opponent. That can take hours. The best players need extraordinary endurance, so most of them are young. Magnus is the youngest #1 ever. And no one can explain to you how he does what he does. It seems to come from another world, which is why he's become known as the Mozart of chess.
Bord 10, G3.
Just look at what he's doing.
Bord 10, løper D2.
Competing against 10 players simultaneously.
Bord 4, løper G7.
That in itself is not extraordinary, but Magnus cannot see the boards. He's facing the other way.
Bord 5, C slår D4.
So he has to keep track of the positions of 320 pieces blind.
Bord 5, tårn B1.
And the number of possible moves, infinite. Magnus comes out on top.
It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Do you have any idea how extraordinary this looks to?
No, it's one of the amazing things in chess that you don't really need a board. You can just keep.
But
it
it transcends chess. I mean, I just can't fathom what you've just done. It's just It seems like it's supernatural.
Last December, we caught up with him at the London Chess Classic. He arrives with his constant companion, his father. Magnus will play against 8 other top-ranked players, but he is the star, as celebrated in this world as Eli Manning is in his.
The world #1 player from Norway, Magnus Carlsen.
Today, Magnus is playing America's #1, Hikaru Nakamura. The match will last 4 hours and there will be no breaks. Magnus will go on a stroll now and then, but his mind won't be going anywhere. He says he's concentrating not only on this game, but on other games played by other masters at other times, which he might want to draw on now. 10,000 of them. We gave him a test.
It was played right here in London, and Simpsons on the Strand. In 1859. I don't know the month or day.
You got it wrong.
Not 59?
51.
Wow.
You see, your memory isn't superb in everything.
It's not what it used to be.
Chess players are pretty poker-faced, but occasionally Magnus will flash the smile of someone who knows it's all over but the handshake, while Nakamura dives deeper into doom. Magnus was playing brilliantly, and he knew it.
Is there anything in life more satisfying than that feeling when you're playing brilliantly?
I don't know, but it's really, up there.
It's pretty good.
Yes.
The spectators seem as mesmerized as the competitors. They're all chess players, of course. If they weren't, it would be like watching paint dry. Worldwide, 100,000 are watching on their computers. The suspense keeps building until endgame, by which time it's cutthroat.
But do you enjoy it when you see your opponent squirm?
Yes, I do. I enjoy it when I see my opponent, really suffering when he knows that I've outsmarted him. If I lose just one game, then usually, I just want to really get revenge.
This is war, isn't it?
Yeah.
For 50 years, chess was war. It was a battleground in the Cold War with the Russians, who were dominant. But then an American came along. His name was Bobby Fischer. In 1972, he took on the Russian champion Boris Spassky, and he won. It was an international spectacle. and the enthusiasm has not waned. Back in London, just down the corridor from where Magnus is playing, 500 novices are learning how to master kings and queens.
Do you ever play any grown-ups?
Yes. Yep, I do play grown-ups. In fact, I'm getting to the hang of playing grown-ups.
Who's your favorite chess player?
Bobby Fischer.
Bobby Fischer.
And I like Magnus Carlsen.
You like Magnus?
Chess is now routinely taught in schools all over the world, including the United States. In some countries, it's compulsory. Chess can be taught, but not genius. Magnus seemed like a normal enough kid growing up outside Oslo. But wait a minute. When he was 5, he could name almost all the countries in the world, and their capitals, and their populations. Magnus's father, Henrik, didn't think that was terribly unusual.
He did have a good memory and the ability to concentrate for hours at the time on a specific topic. And he seemed to be interested in a lot of things, new things all the time. But I thought that was normal.
What got him into chess? Sibling rivalry. His older sister started to play, so he wanted to beat her, which he did, quickly. Then he started winning tournaments. Before long, he became a celebrity, one of the first Norwegians to excel in a sport that did not involve snow. People lined up in shopping malls to play him. When he won, Magnus said it was just a game, no big deal. He couldn't understand why people were making such a fuss.
Why does all people want to talk with little me, you know?
Magnus's parents took him and his sisters out of school for a year, rented out their house, sold their car. It was part holiday, mostly chess. They went to Reykjavik, Iceland, which is where Magnus took a leap into legend, when he was matched against Garry Kasparov, the Russian, considered by many to be the greatest ever. And how did Magnus prepare? By reading up. Kasparov kept the 13-year-old kid waiting for half an hour, and when he did arrive, he didn't even say hello. It was speed chess, the Formula One of the sport, a race against the clock. Kasparov started slow. Magnus started getting bored.
I sat there for a few seconds and then I thought to myself, you know what, I don't know why he's thinking, but I know what my response is going to be anyway, so I'll just walk off and watch the other games.
Kasparov had never played anyone so young, but he did not exude confidence or happiness, and he did not win. Magnus played him to a draw. It was a sensation. Kasparov left quickly. No nice game, kid. Nothing. How did Magnus react? Guess. He thought he had blown it.
When I actually got the winning position, I had little time. I was nervous and I couldn't finish him off.
Why were you nervous?
I was playing Kasparov. I was intimidated.
You were intimidated by playing the world champion when you were already 13 years old?
Yeah, go figure.
It warranted a celebration, of course, and Magnus got to choose.
Yes, I went with my family and had some ice cream at McDonald's.
By the time he was 19, the boy with the ice cream had become #1 in the world.
He has a very deep understanding of chess.
Frederick Friedel's company, ChessBase, publishes the world's most popular chess program.
Is this an indication of genius?
Of genius and raw talent. Now, Magnus has still hasn't reached his peak. He hasn't really worked yet.
I've heard him described as lazy, which I find quite extraordinary.
I think that's an impolite term, but it's probably appropriate.
Except when he's not. Magnus plays soccer whenever he can break away from the board. He's got a mean backhand, and he's moonlighting as a model. There's never been much money in chess, but Magnus is changing that. Sponsors are lining up to endorse him. He's making about $1.5 million a year. But it's a solitary life. Magnus is on the road 200 days a year now. Between matches, he is alone in his hotel room, getting ready for tomorrow's game. He works out almost every day, knows he can't concentrate, for it's often 7 hours unless he's in shape. Magnus says he wouldn't be able to tolerate this life if it weren't for his father, who's always there for him.
When you travel with Magnus, what's your role?
I'm a servant and a chess fan.
You enjoy the games.
Yes.
And so, he says, does Magnus.
Boy, when you look at him, when I look at him, enjoyment is not the word that comes to mind.
It should. Maybe you have to compare it to a writer or a painter. I mean, probably if you see them at work, they're not smiling or having an easy time. They're exploiting their mind to the utmost, and the same with the chess players.
But that level of concentration is not danger-free. A fair number of grandmasters have gone mad, which is what happened to Bobby Fischer in his later years.
This was not an arrest. This was a kidnapping. It was all cooked up.
Do you ever think about that?
Yes, I do. You know, when I was watching the recent film about Bobby Fischer, I was thinking, you know, is this going to be me in a few years? I don't think that's going to happen, but you know, it made me think a little bit that, you know, I have to be aware of this at least.
People have described you as the Mozart of chess. How do you react to that?
Yeah, maybe, but was Mozart ever asked how he does this? I would be very impressed if he had a good answer to that, because I think what he would say is that it just comes natural to me. It's what I do.
Which is what you say.
Yeah.
It's what he does for fun, too, at the Oslo Chess Club where he started. He's playing a Norwegian grandmaster here. It's called bullet chess, and Magnus has a handicap. His opponent is given 3 minutes to make his moves. Magnus has 1. It's just a friendly match, but Magnus always hates to lose, so he doesn't.
Oh, where's he? You got him.
Yeah, I got him.